Into some casual here just on some standard doubles so you can get some practice in since you're new to this game. But
Okay.
anyway, what's up everybody? It's DGBP-ELITE, Freak 1771, aka Brad. We're going to be playing some more Rocket League, doing a little bit of commentary over top of the background video here, really. Today we are going to be discussing, in our personal opinions, what makes a great game. Not just a good game, not just a cool game, not just a unique game. What really makes a game great. What makes it stand out. What makes it something that you remember for years and years and years and just hope for to no end for a sequel or a third or fourth title, however many it may bring. You just stay hopeful for it. So that's what we're going to be talking about today. And I think from this point, I'll kind of let Brad take over here and give his opinion first, just because we kind of differ very, very much so on games. We're going to discuss single-player story games as well as a little bit more of the multiplayer end, since I do quite a bit of that myself. But from here, I'll hand it over to him, and we can go into what makes a great game on Brad's opinion.
Thanks, man. Yeah, first I just want to apologize for like the two people that might watch this video. Our last video, we had some technical difficulties where you could not hear my voice. Hopefully you can hear me now. And just to let Dylan know, make sure your sound effects game volume is down so they can hear our voices.
Yeah, that's part of doing it live, man. Technical glitches and all.
Yeah, definitely, definitely. We're still getting used to it, but yeah, basically today's topic is, in our own personal opinion, what makes a great game. Me personally, I'm more of a single-player experience. I'm not really an online gamer. I like RPGs or single-player action-adventure titles. Like, I'm big into like Final Fantasy, turn-based RPGs, a little bit of Assassin's Creed, and for me, what makes a good game, there's a lot of different factors that plays into this, because it's a totally subjective topic. What
Very
makes a
true.
great game for one person could be a terrible game to another person. For me, there are a few basic points that need to be taken into account to make a great game. The first, for me, is the story. I have to have a good story to really get into a game. It's got to have relatable characters or main character, and that's why I play a lot of Final Fantasy games, because I like the story. You know, I like
Very in-depth.
relatable characters. Yeah, very in depth. I also think that, well, it's not really big for me, but it's big for a lot of people. Is a good-looking game, not necessarily the best graphics, but good graphics. You know, a good art scene behind a game, good scenery to look at. You know, in terms of like retro stuff, which I like to do a lot, you know, 8-bit, 16-bit graphics really aren't everything, but definitely have to have a good art team behind everything you do, complement each other.
I mean, a good example
And
of that is Broforce. You know, you and I played a lot of that when that came out for free on PSN, Brad, and that was something that we, you know, even though it was like that arcadey old 18 or not 18-bit, but 8-bit look to it, like it was updated, it was modern, it was fresh, it felt very rich and unique to what it was.
absolutely, yeah, definitely. Um, Aside from the story and the scenery, the graphics, it's definitely got to be good controls. And if they're not good controls, you better make it to where you can change your controls. Because if you have bad controls, it doesn't matter how good your game looks, it's going to turn a lot of people off if you have bad controls. It just is. Um, so definitely take into account your control layout. And also the bang for your buck, as I like to call it, or the playtime. How many hours of gameplay can you get for a $40 to $60 title? I mean, because you're paying a
That's,
lot of
yeah.
money. Gaming isn't really cheap, so you have to make sure it's got a lot of either replayability or something that that you can take a lot of time out to do. But it can't be too repetitive either. So
Yeah, that's a fair point as well.
variety along with longevity really makes a difference. But those are my key points, I think, for a good game, in my opinion. What about you, man? Any take
Um,
on this?
Yeah, I think we'll kind of touch on the very first thing that you said there is definitely a major factor, and I feel like that's for a lot of people. Now, granted, I'm sure there's the side that they're not really too concerned about a story. It's about the action. It's about how much can you do, this, that, and the other. But storyline for me is a great place to start with this conversation because I have to be engaged. I have to feel like there's a reason or a purpose for what I'm doing. The modern day game is very, very big on what everybody calls the fetch quest. You pick up a quest, you run out, you do it, you come back, you get a little bit of cash or a whatever. But otherwise, it's really just kind of an aimless thing to do. Get this ball out of here! Oh my gosh. It's just kind of an aimless thing to do to a certain extent, and too much of that goes into what you said about repetitiveness with replayability. Can you put a lot of time into it? Okay, maybe you can put 100 hours into it, but out of that 100 hours, how many, is there 45 of that is just little fetch quests and stupid things to do on the side that aren't really meaningful?
Yeah, exactly.
So
and a lot of RPGs,
we're getting beat here, dude.
Yeah, we are. We're getting smoked. A lot of RPGs have that problem with their side quests. They put a ton of them in there. It's kind of like Assassin's Creed. They put a ton of stuff in there, but it's all the same copy and paste. Individual each side quest. You feel like it's a lot. A good balance between not enough, too much content, and then like a shallow copy and paste Assassin's Creed had for a long time and hopefully won't have anymore. But yeah, and I think also if you're gonna have a good story, you can have the best story in the world, but if the ending sucks, then the game sucks.
How many games have we played where the ending just wrecks everything? Like, what are you talking about?
I'm talking to you, No Man's Sky. That's who I'm talking to.
Oh,
starting everything over. I mean, that was devastating. So,
but it it didn't really have much of a story going to begin with in that aspect.
Yeah, but it's kind of like, you can make your own story. You explore the planets and, do whatever you want.
Fair enough.
And being a gigantic sandbox that it is, I mean, you expected something. They stretched the center of the universe so many times, or the galaxy rather, my bad. And they stressed it so much. And then just to have you reboot everything and start
recycle
over.
Yeah.
I mean, that was like a slap in the face. I still got No Man's Sky on my
I think I'm gonna score on us.
On my PlayStation, and I gotta admit this is a sin. I platinum No Man's Sky in terms of achievements, trophies that is, and I regret having it on my list, but I did not play the Pathfinder update at all. I was burnt out, because we both sunk a lot of time into it, man, but especially me. And I just couldn't do it anymore. It's like their fan base is gone, and Hello Games is going to have to change their name, change the face of the company, because Sean Murray's not going to do it for them anymore. But
as far as storyline goes, man, like one thing I can say to that is just like a quick example that I kind of thought of was I've been recently going back through PlayStation Now and playing the BioShock games. I've started off with the first one, and just going back through those, man, it's just, even for a game that's kind of got a dated feel to it now, even though it's been re-rendered and everything and does look nicer through the PS4, it's still got kind of a dated feel to it. But even playing back through that, man, it was crazy just how atmospheric that game is, and how just the sound and the lighting and everything in that game was just so well set up and designed to make the player feel exactly what they wanted.
Yeah, absolutely.
I mean, there's just so much, and like with the Big Daddies, like the design on those was just great. Like, they're loud, they're thudding, they come at you with this wailing sound. I don't even know exactly how to describe it. And every time it's just intense, and it's just got such a good backstory and history behind it. If you really delve into it outside of the game and into the lore and stuff. And that was one example that I kind of wanted to throw up on that list for what I consider to be a great game as far as story goes. I'm not going to delve too much into its story. It's very long, it's very complex, but it's one that I would put up there in the top 5 that I've played as far as creating a believable, well, not necessarily, I mean, obviously fictional, but maybe believable is not the right word, but an immersive universe that I really got sucked into and felt a part of while I was playing.
Yeah, absolutely. Definitely.
And that's a big thing for me. Like, I have to be immersed into its world. I have to care about its world.
Yeah, definitely. And on that note, game designers, they have to be careful. You know, they immerse you, you get so immersed, and then they screw up, and all of a sudden the story takes a back seat to churning a sequel out yearly, kind of like Assassin's Creed was. Now, granted, they have stopped that, and they're going back to their roots, trying to fix things up for the new Assassin's Creed getting ready to come out, which I'm totally hyped for, by the way. But everybody loved Assassin's Creed for their story, especially the Ezio trilogy.
I mean, that was dude. The storyline was the only reason that people slogged through the first game through back and forth in the same area.
Yeah, absolutely.
Because
But
as far as gameplay, like it was inventive, but the map was actually pretty small, and you clambered through the same level of the map numerous times. But you felt compelled because you were like, wait, what's happening next? What's going on in this guy's life?
Exactly. And that took a back seat. You know, after Ezio did his story, they just got these generic 2-bit characters for main, protagonist, and nobody cared. You know, I didn't care about a silent Native American that didn't say anything. I didn't give a crap about what was going on in the French Revolution with this guy that I don't even remember the name, and I didn't give a. I kind of gave a crap about Assassin's Creed Syndicate. You know, I thought it was an interesting take using twins with their own set of skills. So I felt like they kind of did a little better, but I feel like they definitely made the right decision and holding off on their new release for another year.
I also feel like Syndicate was cut so much slack, though, because of how much of a flop Unity was.
Yeah, absolutely.
You know, I mean, they kind of scraped the bottom of the barrel with their games, so the comeback, what might have normally scored, I don't know what it did score, I have no clue, so nobody try to, quote me on this shit later. But in my opinion, something that would have normally scored a 6.5 or a 7 ended up getting, an 8.5.
I don't think it did, actually.
No.
Nobody really bought Syndicate when it first came out because everybody was still pissed off about Unity.
Gotcha.
And, Unity really just tarnished their reputation. And Syndicate was good, but it had another problem. The graphics were good, but it was copy and paste. It was every mission was like the fetch mission, and it got old. And
Gotcha.
Not only that, but they had a lot of weapons where you could buy weapons and customize, your character's fighting style, which was great. But you could get all the weapons in no time at all. So you had 100 different weapons, but you really only needed 2.
Really?
Yeah, I had all the weapons by the time I got to not even halfway through the game. I had all the weapons unlocked, and I didn't even need them. You only really need a sword cane and your hidden blades, and you don't really need to switch it up. I mean,
I've played a few games where I've run into that. That you've got all these cool things, but they don't really feel like individual weapons. And especially in games where you level up a lot, you start getting to a point where no matter what you pick up, it all kind of 1 or 2 shots most small enemies. None of it feels different.
Yeah, absolutely. It all feels the same. And it's interesting you mentioned leveling up, because they had leveling up in Assassin's Creed Syndicate, but you could only level up to level 10, and then you were at the max. And again, I leveled up to level 10 and cleared most of the areas before I even really started the game.
Oh, wow.
Because they just opened the world up to you and let you do whatever, but it was so easy to get everything, you really didn't feel accomplished. And I did platinum this game as well, everybody, by the way. I platinum games that nobody gives a crap about, so there you go.
Yeah, Brad's kind of a platinum trophy hunter in his own right.
I'm a novice, really. I mean, I've got 9 platinums now, working on a 10th, but if it seems feasible, I'll do it, but I'm not going to kill myself to try and get a platinum. If it seems logical, feasible, and, within my skill level to do so, and I have nothing better to do, I'll go ahead and shoot for it. But there have been times where I've been worn away, and that one trophy is just so hard to get.
It's just not worth
makes
it.
me want to break my controller. It's just not worth it. So I'm stuck at 91% or 99% or whatever the case may be, and it, haunts me forever.
Shit.
Kind of like Final Fantasy X.
Okay, so Brad, on that note, then,
yeah.
not to interrupt. Sorry, I didn't mean to totally do that, but I just kind of wanted to interject because we're on that note. I'm not too big into hunting down trophies myself, but I do know that in the online gaming world, on pretty much any console, that is a big thing for a lot of people. Like, would you consider that part of what goes into making a great game, or are the trophies just kind of like an extra like little bonus if they're there, if they're not?
Well, here's the thing, and I'm glad you brought that up because I have kind of mixed feelings about that. Here's the thing. A lot of games, they'll put achievements in there just to have them, and they're so easy to get. You platinum it in one go through. It's really easy. I mean, there's one game, I can't remember which one, but you told me about it on 360 where you start the game and you get an achievement just for starting the game.
There's quite a few like that, actually. Yeah.
Yeah, and I think that's kind of stupid. An achievement should be just that, something you achieve, not something that's handed to you.
Fair enough.
And I think a lot of games just do it to have them in there, and that's where they make a lot of their sales, was that, oh, this is an easy platinum, so I'll just play it for the platinum just to have it on my record. And if you're going to make a game like that, don't put achievements or trophies in there at all. You're just wasting your time. Now, there are some games where the achievements are just that, a real achievement, and they take a lot of time and effort to name each trophy, give it clever, names or whatever, and to make it challenging, but not, so challenging that you just want to break your controller.
True.
And I get that some achievements, they're easy to get, at first, in the beginning of the game, and that's fine, but if you're going to make every achievement just a handout, don't even bother putting them in your game. Because a game does not need achievements to be good. A game should have achievements to test the player's skill. And if they don't test any skill, then there's no point in having it.
Now, do you feel like, though, because I kind of touched on, the game has to have a reason for what I'm doing. Do you kind of feel like maybe being able to see those trophies and say, okay, this is what I'm going for, this is what I'm trying to get, that maybe that's something that drives specific individual players? They see that and they're like, well, I really want that trophy, so now I have to strive to do that.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm guilty of that too, on certain games, and yeah, definitely. And I've spoken to a lot of people, a lot of mutual friends that we have that are gamers. They've often said to me, yeah, I do this because I want that trophy or I want that achievement. In reality, I think that's kind of a crappy way to play a game, just to, have bragging rights for achievements. You should play it because you enjoy it and it's a good game. But there is that aspect of, I achieved something, I got bragging rights, and that's cool.
Yeah.
Yeah, but
I don't know. It's just a curious thought.
Is.
I'm not much of a trophy hunter myself. I mean, if I get one, I get one. That's kind of how I look at it. I don't even really ever try to look at too many of them. I would drive myself nuts trying to accomplish all that, honestly.
Oh, believe me, I've been there. Yeah, definitely.
All right, so another point that you made, I think it was your second one, and like you said, maybe not as big of a thing for you specifically, so much as a lot of other people, especially online gamers such as myself, is graphics. How much can you pump out? How quick can you pump it out? What can you do with the power that you've been given on whatever console or PC that you're using or have?
Right.
For me, here, Brad, come back to the lobby with me, and I'll start up a new one.
Okay.
But anyway, what I was saying there, I feel like having good graphics is something that's definitely compelling for someone such as myself, and not even in a sense of like how realistic does it look. It's just how textured does it look? How much time does it look like that was put into the development team saying, all right, we're going to texture this, we're going to light and shade this, we're going to make it look good. And that's not necessarily a realism thing whatsoever. It doesn't have to be a realistic game to have all that.
Yeah,
and
absolutely.
I think there's a big misconception there. People look at games and they're like, well, it looks cartoony, so it's shit, or it doesn't look real. And it's like, to me, that's not the case. Like, Overwatch, for example, it looks cartoony as fuck, dude, but like it's such a well-designed and beautifully colored game. It's amazing what they've done with the level design and the maps in that game.
It's very stylized, yeah.
Very much so. There was a lot of thought put into the things that they did with that game, and you can see it.
Well, and I think a lot of it too is what style are you going for? Because a lot of indie games are 8-bit and 16-bit, you know? And it's like, they're not bad games. In fact, you know, stuff like Fez and Undertale, they're all really good games, but they look the way they do because that's the style the developer was going for, you know.
But I feel in a way like that drives away a lot of people in a specific market because a lot of people aren't. It's more of a niche game at this point, or a type of game at this point.
Well, I think a lot of people like that are really big into graphics and that's their main gripe. I think those people aren't really like, you know, they haven't been into gaming for years and years, and they just kind of want the newest, best looking thing, and they're not really interested in, you know, in like the retro style or anything because they didn't grow up with it. So if it doesn't look as realistic as you think it should, they won't buy it. And I think that's a very closed-minded way of looking at games because there's a lot of different styles that, you know, great games have.
For a good majority on that note, though, that a lot of the people that go specifically like, what does the game look like? What's the game's graphics got in it? A lot of those people may be more specifically people that don't have a lot of time to game or that do the online gaming thing a little bit more. And that tends to come to mind specifically in the realm of shooters.
Yeah.
You know, that's where you hear a lot of the big gripes with shooters. You know, people will say, I'm not buying it because it doesn't look like this or look like that.
Yeah. Yeah, that's definitely...
for me personally, graphics would come in somewhere 4th or 5th on that list. I mean, like, they need to be good, in my opinion. I need to be able to tell that you put time into it. But at the same time, like, I've played games that were very, very two-dimensional before or... you know, not realistic whatsoever, that the story was compelling enough to play through. Small little indie titles that only take, you know, maybe an hour and a half to play through that were excellent little games to play. And at the price point that the indie market has, it doesn't cost much to play those at all.
Right. What you see is what you get, what you pay for is what you get.
And that's usually the case. I mean, there are obviously cases where the indie market isn't honest, but for the vast majority that I've seen of indie games that become successful, they're pretty honest from day one about what their product is. They don't try to sell it as something that it's not, which you see with a lot of these AAA game, you know, companies. And in some small way, you can blame them, but in a lot of ways, I look at it like the developers that push their product as something that it's not sometimes are just under the thumb of their publisher.
Oh, yeah.
Whereas I feel like some of these indie studios may not really have as much pressure there. They're just kind of hanging out, you know, doing their thing, doing their coding, and seeing what happens.
Yeah, definitely. But, you know, it's one thing to kind of, you know, tell a little white lie about the graphics and how good it looks. You know, if it's not quite up to par, but it's not terrible, I'm fine with that. You know, you can lie about graphics a little more, like with Assassin's Creed. Every trailer they show is a cinematic trailer. It's not really what it looks like in gameplay.
Well, or if it's gameplay, they're using like in-house graphics on their home PCs that this is all being built and coded on. You know, like it's never going to look like that on anybody's. It doesn't matter if you got a 4K TV and a Pro. It's not going to look like the trailer you saw on their computer.
Yeah, and what really gets me isn't little white lies about that, about the graphics. It is lies about functionality or content in-game. Again, No Man's Sky.
You just love to go there.
Oh, I do. I wasted time platinuming that thing. I'm going to go there, all right? I've earned the right to go there. Yeah, but
you really did.
A lot of it is flat out lying just to sell their game, and lying about looks is one thing, but lying about the content that's in your game and the functionality of the game is just too much. It's too underhanded, and at that point you're not telling a fib, you're not trying to sell a product, you're just flat out lying.
Well, and one thing that there's a big sin with nowadays, especially with everybody talking the Xbox One X, PS4, and all these other things about it's all 4K, it's this, that, and the other, and then you've got game developers that are like, whoa, we didn't say that shit, like they did, you know, and that's a big thing right now for people is like, okay, I'm pushing out 4K, but what is my frames per second on this shit?
Yeah, and a lot of times instead of being 60 FPS like a good like a good frame rate should be, they drop to like 20 and 30 FPS.
Right, and a lot of people have noticed that, you know, through playing these games that promise this 4K and shit, and they're like, that's fine. Like, when the game's running smoothly, it looks beautiful, but most of the time I get texture breakouts in the background and shit. Like,
right.
So I don't know. There's a lot of ways that goes, man. But for me, like when it comes down to graphics, for me it's specifically attention to detail with your graphics, not necessarily how much power you've put into them.
Oh, absolutely.
I'm trying to think here. Point number 3 that you made after graphics.
Functionality.
Controls, handling. Yes, yes. We all know that can either be wonderful or fucking game breaking. I'm talking to you.
That can be rage-inducing.
Escape Dead Island. That's my go-to
Yeah.
for broken gameplay is Escape Dead Island.
I've never actually played it. Tell me your horror stories, man. What's the deal with it?
Man, just sluggish, just clunky, just third-person cel-shaded graphics that looked like it was a straight cash grab. It's just blatantly obvious that it was a cash grab. The controls and the handling within the game were just poor. And maybe other people might argue that. Maybe some people said I played it and I enjoyed it and I didn't think it was that bad. But for me, the style of third person that they had was just unacceptable for what it should have been, in my opinion.
Yeah, see, for me, you know, whether you're going to be in first person or third person, I'm more of a third-person guy myself. I've never been much for first-person points of view. But if you're going to have the option, like some of the Elder Scrolls games, they're mainly first-person, but they have a third-person option. The third-person option doesn't control well.
Oh my god,
sucks.
it's oof.
If you're going to have both options, make sure they both are up to par and as good as one is as good as the other.
That's a fair point. I don't feel like a lot of games
option.
do that now, but that is a very, very good point, man.
Yeah, definitely. And that's what turned me off of the Elder Scrolls games. It's just I hate first person. I always have, and I don't know why. The first Dead Island was the only game where I was able to get over that and really enjoy the game, which I did. I really enjoyed the first Dead Island. But first person's just never been my thing. It never has. I like to be able to see my character and see everything around him or her, and see the character, especially if you're in an RPG where you get to design your character. I want to see what my character looks like because I took time to design that avatar.
And that's true too. You know, they do a lot of like add-ons and skins and stuff for first-person games, and it's like at that point it's strictly just to show off to other people. You know?
Yeah, exactly.
And my counterpoint for where you said the third person didn't work well in Skyrim, in your opinion, versus the first person was pretty good. For me, Grand Theft Auto, it's sweet that GTA 5 added a first-person mode. Like, I love it. It's absolutely awesome. But comparatively to its third person, it feels kind of blocky and clunky and a little bit outdated for what a first-person game is now that feels fluid.
Kind of just thrown in, like it was just added on just to shut people up, you know?
No, it definitely feels like there was detail and time put into it. You can definitely tell that they fleshed it out before they did it. It doesn't by any means control badly. It just feels a little bit more blocky than your average modern-day shooter does at this point. It just feels a little bit more clunky.
Ah.
Man, we're getting stomped on,
we
Brad.
are really sucking. You know, if any of our viewers, you know, are saying, wow, they suck at this game. Yes, we do.
In the first place, and we're doing a stream over the video in the background, so, oh well. Whatever.
Yeah, our attention isn't fully focused. You know, we're new at this. Give us a break, guys. Come on.
But, I'll kind of go into my end a little bit here. One thing that we haven't really talked about that I think I should maybe touch on a little bit is, a leveling system. Now, this isn't to say to make a great game you have to have a leveling system. It is just to say that I am a big fan of that, and if the game is to include one, it has to be thought out and done well and fleshed out properly, because I've ran into so many games that have a leveling system that we get to kind of like what you spoke of earlier, Brad. You've got all these different options, and they all kind of feel the same. You know?
Yeah, just like Syndicate. You know, their maximum level was 10. By the time you get to level 10, you're done. It's like you own everything.
Right.
Space it out, you know?
And it's the thing, you know, the leveling system has to feel progressive. It can't just feel like, oh, cool, you know, I got this like new thing. But in the same sense, I've played the exact counter opposite of that in a game as well, where I get to level 50 out of 100, and by 50, I am just storming through absolutely everything like it's nothing, even on harder difficulties.
Right. And that's where, like a lot of RPGs tend to go with your enemies. They level up with you to a certain point. You level up and you get new skills and new strategies to help you in your combat, but the enemies are also just as strong as you, so you have to use those new strategies and combat abilities to really get the upper hand, no matter where you are in the game.
Yeah. And
you know,
that was
there's
where...
a right and a wrong way to do it.
That was where, like, back to Skyrim, because you kind of spoke on that a minute ago, with that, like, I felt like, well, they did have a very large and expansive... This is just getting ugly. Well, they did have a very large and expansive skill tree that I almost felt like was too much. I get that most everybody would argue with me. That's the point of Skyrim. It's huge. It's large. That's you go big or go home with Skyrim. I get that. But that was one that you could tell they sat down for a long fucking time, and they were like, how much shit can we put into this that makes sense, that actually does something for your player? You know, and it was very well done. The Far Cry series, I'm a huge fan of most of those, with the exclusion of Primal, because fuck you guys for ever making that game. I just fuck you guys. Anyway, they've always been a really good example for me on a skill tree. Like, the things that you get within those games, while they have been kind of repeated through recent years, they're always effective in some way or another. You know, you can drop down on an enemy and kill them, kind of like Assassin's Creed, you know, has added in, again, Ubisoft, so same company, same kind of concept there with the drop-down kill, or the kill from below. They're abilities that your player didn't have before. It's not just like, oh, hey, look, you've got more health, or you can run a little faster. Like, you're adding kills and abilities to your repertoire that make your character feel like he's growing throughout the game.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm going to switch topics here just a little bit, because we've touched on pretty much every aspect of gaming and what we think makes a good game. But the big problem, I think, is games are, you know, really up there in entertainment nowadays. They're rivaling Hollywood movies in terms of popularity and budget. So I think there's a lot more pressure on developers today more than ever to make a big blockbuster hit, because, you know, they're spending so much money and it's such a big budget on these games. It's do or die with some of these games.
So you feel like maybe there's too much stress and pressure being put on this exact subject. Well, what makes a great game? That you've got too many people sitting around in a boardroom quaking in their boots going, how do we do it, guys? What do we do?
Yeah, exactly. And I think that's a huge problem. I think it's a really, really big problem, and I don't know if it'll be resolved. I think with, you know, current technology, put out a day one patch to fix up some things and keep updating the game over and over. But back in the day, I'm going to sound old here, but back in the day, you got the disc. That was the game you got, and it better work.
You better work.
Your money if it didn't.
Yeah, I mean, it better work.
Be what you thought it was going to be, you know. But nowadays, it's updates, free DLC, or even paid DLC, you know, whatever. Everything you can do to fix your game. It doesn't have to be a finished product at release. You can finish it later and release it, you know, as a beta, you know. And it's kind of ridiculous. Some companies do that a lot. Talking to you, Unity, Assassin's Creed. Anyway. Yeah, and I think a lot of companies are also too comfortable. Well, we'll just release a patch, you know, on day one. Don't worry about it. Just get it out there. And I think a lot of companies are becoming complacent like that. But, you know, media is changing. Eventually, physical media is going to be out the window anyway. So,
Yeah.
it's like, what can you do? I mean, the gaming industry, what younger viewers don't understand is the gaming industry has changed so much. I mean, people who grew up with a PS3, you know, were like 13, 14 when
Go
it
back to
came
menu, Brad.
out. They, I mean, the PS3 lasted what, almost 10 years? And it
I
used to
believe
be
somewhere
every
around
four to
that,
five
yeah.
years, you know, the new console would come out. And the that generation, the 7th gen, they lasted twice as long.
Here, come back to menu real quick, Brad.
All right. And
But
I think,
oh, go ahead. Sorry.
I mean, I think that's a really big problem because, I mean, it's just not the way it used to be in terms of what you're buying. When you buy it, you know, you don't really know what you're getting nowadays. You pick up a game, it's okay if it doesn't work properly because they'll come up with a patch later on, or you know, and now
Do you feel
just
like
kind of makes you
that's
wonder.
do you feel like that's a bit to take off of like you mentioned before though, the stress of like how do we make a great game, how do we do this? Like maybe they put so much time and effort into making the great game and they think like, all right, well not everything works at the moment, but we'll get the patch. So maybe there's just such a drive to do that that putting out like saying, hey, we're going to do a day one patch of this just takes the stress off. Or
It might in some cases, but in some cases, I think it might create more stress. Um, I think what Ubisoft did in their case was a great idea. You know, instead of churning out another yearly title, they took another year off, and they were like, "Look, we're going to do this right. We're going to overhaul everything." And
yeah,
from
that
what
was
I've
smart.
seen, I mean, the map system has changed. They've changed the combat system with Assassin's Creed Origins. They've changed everything. The look and feel of it, it looks great. It feels different. It feels more like a, you know, there's no mini map. It's like a Skyrim kind of thing where the arrow points you north, south, east, and west, and you follow the arrow.
Gotcha.
And the combat system isn't just a bunch of well-timed button presses. You know, it takes a little more thought and a little more know-how to really get the hang of the battle system.
But again,
And I think,
Ubisoft is known for that, though. Ubisoft is very well known for the day one patch.
oh yeah, and I think what they're trying to do, and I hope they succeed, is they're trying to get out of that. They're trying to get out of we're known for, you know, a yearly title or a day one patch. They're trying to get out of that and get back to the roots. And I think from what I've seen, they're succeeding in that, you know. But I don't know.
I hope so.
We'll wait.
I would like to see. I mean, not that I was ever that into them, but I know the hype that went behind those games when they started releasing, and I would like to see them get back to that because Ubisoft puts out great games, like hands down. It's just a matter of sometimes their fuck ups outweigh some of the games they put out in the past that were great.
Yeah, definitely.
I mean, that's
But, you know,
that's
I
not
just-
to say that other companies haven't run into that same issue. There are plenty of other companies that have put out some major flops, some that have even destroyed them, and that's something I think we could go into in a whole nother video, is games that have just completely faltered a company.
Oh yeah, absolutely. No Man's Sky. Sorry, I just hate that game.
No, Hello Games isn't dead yet. They haven't filed for bankruptcy as far as I'm aware.
Hey, like I said, they should change their name from Hello Games to Goodbye Games, because I guarantee you, after this flop, they're not going to be making any other games for a while. They're just going to try and revive No Man's Sky. Sean
Yeah, I
Murray's lost
don't
his
know,
credibility.
man. I'm not sure what's going to happen with them. That'll be a whole different topic later on, I'm sure.
Yeah, no kidding.
One thing, though, that we kind of didn't touch on that I just want to throw in here as a last little tidbit is it kind of goes along with the world and the map and stuff, is the level design. Whether it's open world, whether it's, you know, straightforward to the point, either way, level design is a huge factor for me. Was it well thought out? Am I backtracking constantly over and over to the same place? If I am, why? Is there a reason for it? Because if not, I don't want to do it.
Right, exactly. Don't make it too tedious, because then we'll just get bored.
Right. So yeah, that was one little thing I didn't really throw in there that I kind of wanted to add. That's definitely up there within the top like 5 or 6 on that, I would say, out of 10 list kind of thing if I had to throw one out. But that would definitely be a big one for me, is just a fleshed out world and level design, something that you can tell that they wanted to have a specific look and feel, that it wasn't just thrown together like, hey, let's put this pylon here, let's put this fucking crate here, whatever. And it wasn't just like slapstick for the developer, because you can tell when that kind of hard work and effort has been put into a game. You can tell when the person who designed a specific room or a specific area in a game really cared about what they were doing.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And I think that's one of the things indie developers, they got going for them, because they're small teams, sometimes just one person, and they really care. It's their passion, it's their life's work in some cases.
Yes.
And I think that is kind of why the gaming industry is kind of headed to the indie scene more than anything, is because they're going back to their roots. They really are passionate about their games, and I think that's going to both help and hurt the industry, in the sense that it's kind of like you're starting all over. The big names kind of lost their mojo, and then you've got to start over and figure out which companies you expect what from. You know what I mean? So
yeah, and that's very true. The indie scene, and that's why you get so many other YouTubers and streamers of all sorts that are constantly talking about indie games, because they played through them and they were just like, wow, like I didn't expect such a gripping or compelling story or such a well thought out world to come out of a $25 title.
Yeah, and sometimes even cheaper than that. And I think, like I said, I'm against going full digital download, and I like physical media, but I think that that's really going to help indie developers, because these small, sometimes one-person teams that don't have money to churn physical copies out, just going through direct downloads really helps them.
It does.
But at the same time, it really hurts retro gamers like me and people who like having physical copies of their stuff, because if that company goes under, they go bankrupt, their game doesn't do well, but you like their game, and their company closes down, their streaming service closes down, support for the game closes down.
That's true.
And you don't have a physical copy you can pick up and play. So it's a double-edged sword, no matter what way you look at it.
And I feel like that's the direction it's going. I honestly don't feel like it's going to be as soon as a lot of people say. I don't think we're looking at, in the next 2 or 3 years, we're going to be all digital. I think it's going to take a lot longer than that to flesh out the digital, the physical copy world. I think it's going to take a lot longer than people actually expect it to, but I do think that that's going to be how it goes at some point, and that does kind of suck to a certain extent, because you do kind of lose that, like, hey, here's the case, here's the box, the actual thing that makes it kind of collectible.
Yeah, definitely. And it's an investment too, because like people sell retro games. You don't have anything to sell when it gets when you don't want it. You cannot sell a downloaded copy of a game. I mean, there's no investment to it. But like I say, it's another double-edged sword. But I think we'll be lucky if I think we'll have one more physical console generation before they go to completely just streaming services, because I think that's what it's going to come down to, and that's another topic for another video. But I think we've got one more solid console generation before we go digital.
I would say so. Yeah. I feel like for this video we've kind of gotten a little bit off topic at times about what makes a great game and whatnot, but at the same time, I've had fun talking about it. It was definitely a fun thing to do. I feel like we could delve a little bit deeper into it next time, but again, everybody, that's part of how it goes when it's live and unscripted. You get what you get, so
yeah.
Like, jot out a halfway script or something and present one to you guys that's a little bit more on track and whatnot. But otherwise,
maybe we'll get right on that.
Yeah, maybe.
Maybe.
Otherwise, it's just going to be the rambling of us two for a little while for now, over some gameplay in the background of whatever we're doing. But Brad, if it's cool with you, man, I feel like it's a good place to cut it off. We'll go pick up some homies here and play some Rocket League with them. Cut out the feed.
Absolutely. Remember to leave us a comment, a like, subscribe if you like what we're doing, and let us know your thoughts and opinions in the comments. Thanks, guys.
Yeah, most definitely. Let us know what you guys think makes a great game. You know, what keeps you playing, what keeps you coming back to it, and what makes it memorable. But other than that, guys, we're going to cut out here. Everybody have a good night. Take care.